Chapter 14, Water Screencast 2. This screencast is going to be focusing on the diverse functions of water in our body. Now, it also is important to keep a couple of other things in mind. And water is a very unique molecule for many reasons. Probably one of the most important is that it is a polar molecule, and water molecules are attracted to other water molecules and held together by hydrogen bonds. Now, when we look at primary functions, they include the maintenance of blood volume. Remember, plasma is mostly water, and as such, it is a medium for the transport of nutrients and oxygen. It's going to be necessary in the production of any fluid, and fluids would be saliva, bile, amniotic fluid. We can expect it to act as a lubricant. It will serve as the universal solvent in metabolic processes, and also it will participate in chemical reactions called hydrolysis. And remember, that is water used to cleave a molecule and is an example of a catabolic reaction. Now, one of the things that water plays a very important role is that of temperature regulation. And this is due to the fact that water has what we refer to a high specific heat capacity. And what that means, it can actually absorb a lot of energy before temperature actually increases. Think about how much energy you have to put in to boil water. That is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it makes sense that most of us is water, and that really allows to help thermoregulate. And remember, once again, this is due to the fact that water is held together to other water molecules by hydrogen bonds. And remember, we refer to that concept as surface tension. Now, sweating is also a way in which we thermoregulate ourselves. And in that situation, heat from our skin is transferred to sweat, and it is actually the evaporation of that on our skin that results in the cooling process we experience from sweat. Kind of imagine on a humid day, it's really warm, it's muggy, and that won't evaporate. It also is important when we talk about the removal of metabolic waste. Remember, the primary way in which we get rid of most of our waste is primarily through our urine. Typical urine output is about 4.5 to 8.5 cups per day, and that works out to about 1.5 to 2 liters. This will easily change dependent upon the level of hydration. Other things that will have an impact on this will be protein and sodium intake. If urine output drops frequently below 2.5 cups per day, you're looking at a risk of the formation of kidney stones. Now, where we get the greatest amount of water in our diet is going to be beverages. There also is some food that has a high water content, but the things that we need to remember here, many of these fluids are high in calories. Examples would be juice, fancy coffee drinks, all of those. So these calories that we find in some beverages can actually contribute to obesity and cardiovascular disease. In an effort to maintain normal weight, make sure you are thinking about the caloric content of the beverages that you consume. And also, we might get them in micronutrients. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is caffeinated beverages will not lead to dehydration. Alcoholic beverages, on the other hand, will increase urine output, and they potentially can result in dehydration. One thing to remember, in the United States, we have a relatively safe water supply. There definitely are some exceptions to the rule, but it is important to think bottled water is actually no safer than municipal tap water. And one of the issues here associated with bottled water is the actual waste that we have from these plastic bottles. The other thing to remember here is water is also abundant in many fruits and vegetables that we consume on a regular basis. Here we're basically looking at some of the calorie content of some popular beverages. And remember what I said previously about those fancy coffee drinks. Here is a mocha, and these are 12-ounce drinks unless noted otherwise. And with whipped cream, that actually has 250 calories. A cranberry juice is going to have 200. If we look at beer, 145. So you get the idea here. fluids contain a really fairly significant amount of calories when you're starting to consume something other than water itself. Now, here we're also looking at some examples of water content found in foods, and this is by weight. So if we look at foods that tend to be high in water, unsurprisingly, we see lots of fruits here. So we look at apples, bananas, tomatoes, etc. So very, very high in water. Here we're looking at beer. Of course, that's high in water. But the thing that I want you to take note here is here we are looking at pretty much all components of my plate, and we're actually finding water in all of these food items. Now, I'm not going to go over this table overall, and this may give you some idea of the amount of fluid that you consume based on these different types of drinks and foods that you might consume on a daily basis. So keep in mind, the grand total here is actually 97.1 fluid ounces, and that works out actually to 12.1 cups, and that will meet the AI for a woman.